The 911 call came in at 3:17 a.m., and the dispatcher who answered it would later testify that she had never heard a voice so calm describe something so terrifying. A woman whispering into the phone that there was a man standing in her backyard, watching her through the sliding glass door, and he had been standing there without moving for over 2 hours. The caller's name was Rachel Morrison, 31 years old, a graphic designer who worked from home in a modest 2-story house on Willow Creek Lane in suburban Austin, Texas, a neighborhood so quiet and so safe that most residents didn't bother locking their doors during the day. Rachel had woken at 1:03 a.m. to use the bathroom, and on her way back to bed, she had glanced out her bedroom window, just a casual glance, the kind of look a person gives without really expecting to see anything, and that was when she saw him. A man standing at the edge of her patio, motionless, facing her house. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. The moon was bright that night, casting silver shadows across her lawn, and shapes could look like people in that kind of light. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, looked again. He was still there, not moving, not approaching, just standing, watching. Rachel's first instinct was to scream, to run, to call for help immediately, but something stopped her. Some deep, primitive understanding that prey should not reveal itself to a predator, that the moment she showed fear might be the moment he decided to act. So instead of screaming, she stepped back from the window, pressing herself against the wall where he couldn't see her, and she watched him through the gap between the curtain and the frame. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. The man did not move. He stood with his arms at his sides, his face tilted upward toward her bedroom window, and even from this distance, Rachel could tell that his eyes were open, unblinking, fixed on the exact spot where she had been standing moments before. He knew which window was hers. He had been watching long enough to know. The realization sent ice flooding through her veins. This was not a random encounter. This was not a drunk who had wandered into the wrong yard. This was someone who had studied her house, learned her patterns, chosen this night for a reason she couldn't yet understand. Rachel crept to her nightstand, moving in absolute silence, and retrieved her phone. She did not turn on any lights. She did not make any sound. She typed out a text message to her neighbor, David Chen, who lived 3 houses down and who she knew kept a handgun in his bedroom. "Someone in my backyard. Don't call, don't make noise, just watch." David's response came 30 seconds later. "I see him. Calling 911. Stay hidden." But Rachel was already dialing. She couldn't wait for David. She couldn't trust that anyone else would understand the urgency, the wrongness, the particular horror of a man who stands motionless for hours in the dark, patient as death, waiting for something only he understood. The dispatcher answered. Rachel whispered her address, her situation, the description of what she could see. The dispatcher asked if the man had tried to enter the house. Rachel said no. The dispatcher asked if he had a weapon. Rachel said she couldn't tell. The dispatcher asked if she was somewhere safe. Rachel almost laughed. Safe? What did safe mean when a predator was standing 20 feet from your door, when the only thing between you and him was a pane of glass that could shatter with a single blow? "I'm in my bedroom," she whispered, "upstairs, but I don't know if the doors are locked. I don't remember if I locked the sliding door before bed." There was a pause on the line, a terrible pause that lasted maybe 2 seconds, but felt like an eternity. Then the dispatcher spoke again, her voice carefully controlled. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line with me. Officers are en route. ETA approximately 8 minutes. Do not approach the doors. Do not turn on any lights. Do not let him know you're awake." 8 minutes. Rachel closed her eyes. 8 minutes was nothing in normal life, the time it took to brew coffee, to check email, to scroll through morning headlines. But 8 minutes with a stranger standing in your backyard? 8 minutes of not knowing whether he was about to move, whether he was about to try the door, whether he was about to come for you? That was an eternity. She opened her eyes again and looked through the gap in the curtain. The man was gone. Rachel's heart stopped. She scanned the yard frantically, the patio, the lawn, the fence line, the shadow beneath the oak tree, and saw nothing. No movement, no figure, just empty moonlit grass and the dark shapes of patio furniture and the sliding glass door that led into her living room. Where was he? Had he left? Had he seen the lights of an approaching car and fled? Or had he moved somewhere she couldn't see, somewhere closer, somewhere that would give him access to... The sound came from downstairs. A soft sound, barely audible, the kind of sound that could have been the house settling, or the refrigerator cycling, or 100 other innocent things. But Rachel knew it wasn't innocent. She knew it the way animals know when a predator has entered their territory, the way the body knows danger before the mind can name it. He was inside. "He's in the house," Rachel breathed into the phone. "Oh God, he's in the house. He got in through the—" "Ma'am, I need you to hide, now. Find a room with a lock, barricade yourself inside, and stay completely silent. Officers are 4 minutes out." 4 minutes. Rachel moved without thinking, her body operating on pure survival instinct, while her mind screamed in terror. She slipped out of her bedroom, crossed the hallway in 3 silent steps, and entered the bathroom at the end of the hall, the only upstairs room with a lock on the door. She closed the door as quietly as she could, turned the lock, and pressed her back against the wall beside the toilet, making herself as small as possible. The phone was still in her hand. She could hear the dispatcher's voice, tinny and distant, asking if she was safe, asking for updates, but Rachel couldn't respond. Any sound might give away her position. Any word might be the thing that led her to her. She heard footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate, 1 step every few seconds, as if he were savoring the approach, enjoying the hunt. The stairs in Rachel's house creaked. She had always meant to fix that, had always found the sound annoying, but now she was grateful for every groan and pop, because each one told her exactly where he was. 3rd step from the bottom, 5th step, 8th step, the top of the stairs. The footsteps stopped. Rachel held her breath. She could hear him breathing now, slow and steady, the breathing of a man who was not afraid, who was not rushing, who had all the time in the world. She heard him move down the hallway, heard him stop at Rachel's bedroom door, heard the door swing open, heard him step inside, heard him pause, probably looking at her empty bed, the rumpled sheets, the indent in the pillow where her head had been. Then she heard something that made her blood freeze. He laughed, a soft, quiet laugh, almost gentle, as if he found something amusing about the empty room, about the chase, about the game they were playing. And then his footsteps started again, coming back down the hallway, and Rachel knew with absolute certainty that he was checking every room, every door, every possible hiding place, and that he would reach the bathroom in less than 30 seconds. She looked around frantically. The bathroom window was small, but she might be able to fit through it. It opened onto the roof of the back porch, a drop of maybe 8 feet to the grass below. She could make that jump. She could run to David's house or to the street or anywhere that wasn't here. Rachel moved to the window, unlocked it as quietly as she could, and pushed it open. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp, carrying the distant sounds of sirens, the police finally coming closer. She was halfway through the window when the bathroom door exploded inward. The lock held for maybe half a second before his shoulder burst through the frame, sending splinters of wood flying across the tile floor. Rachel screamed, the first sound she had made since this nightmare began, and threw herself through the window, her hip catching on the frame, her hands scraping against the shingles as she tumbled onto the porch roof. She didn't look back. She rolled to the edge of the roof and jumped, hitting the grass hard, her ankle twisting beneath her with a flare of white-hot pain. But she was up again immediately, limping, running for help as the sirens grew louder and red and blue lights appeared at the end of Willow Creek Lane. She heard him behind her, heard his feet hit the grass, heard him running, closing the distance, and she knew she wasn't fast enough, knew her twisted ankle had stolen the seconds she needed, knew that he was going to catch her before the police could. David Chen's voice cut through the darkness. "Stop! I will shoot!" Rachel turned her head and saw David standing on his front lawn in his bathrobe, a pistol held in both hands, aimed at the figure that had frozen 10 feet behind her. The man, Rachel could see him clearly now, a thin man in dark clothing with a pale, unremarkable face, the kind of face you would forget 5 minutes after seeing it, stood motionless again, just as he had stood in her backyard, just as he had waited for hours in the dark. But this time his stillness wasn't predatory, it was calculating. He was deciding whether to run or fight. The police cruiser screeched to a stop at the curb. 2 officers jumped out, weapons drawn, shouting commands, and the man in dark clothing made his decision. He bolted, sprinting towards the back of David's property, vaulting a fence with surprising agility and disappearing into the darkness beyond. 1 officer pursued on foot, the other stayed with Rachel, guiding her to sit on the curb, calling for medical backup, asking her questions she could barely hear through the roaring in her ears. They didn't catch him that night. The man vanished into the maze of suburban backyards and wooded lots, and by the time a helicopter arrived to assist, he was gone. But they found things in Rachel's house that told the story of what he had planned. A backpack hidden beneath her porch, containing zip ties, duct tape, a hunting knife, and a small bottle of chloroform. A notebook in the backpack's front pocket, filled with handwritten observations, Rachel's work schedule, her sleep patterns, the days she ordered takeout versus the days she cooked, the fact that she lived alone, the fact that she rarely had visitors. The fact that she was perfect, there were other names in that notebook too. 14 of them. Women from neighborhoods across Austin, each with their own page of observations, each with a rating system that Rachel couldn't bring herself to understand. Some of the names had been crossed out. Rachel's name was circled. Detective Maria Santos showed Rachel the notebook 3 days later in a conference room at the Austin Police Department. Rachel stared at the pages, at her own life reduced to bullet points and schedules, and she asked the only question that mattered. "Have you caught him?" Santos shook her head. "Not yet, but we will. We have his DNA from the window frame, we have his fingerprints from the backpack. We have 14 potential witnesses who might have seen him watching them. It's only a matter of time." Time. Rachel thought about that word. Time was what the man had used against her. Hours of standing, waiting, studying, planning. Time was what she had bought herself by noticing him, by staying silent, by hiding and running, and refusing to freeze when every instinct screamed at her to give up. Time was what separated survivors from victims. She went home that afternoon to a house with a new sliding door, new locks, a new security system that David had helped her install. She walked through the room slowly, reclaiming each space, refusing to let fear make her a stranger in her own home. That night, Rachel slept with the lights on and a phone in her hand, and one eye always half open, listening for sounds that didn't belong. But she slept in her own bed, in her own house, on the street where she had chosen to build her life. And that, she decided, was its own kind of victory. Small, fragile, hard-won, but real. 3 weeks later, a man matching the description was arrested in San Antonio, caught watching a woman's apartment from his parked car at 2 a.m. His name was Vincent Ray Caldwell. 42 years old, no prior record, a quiet tenant in a quiet building, the kind of neighbor everyone described as nice and kept to himself. He confessed to stalking Rachel Morrison. He confessed to the 14 other names in his notebook, and he confessed to something else, something that made Detective Santos call Rachel personally, her voice shaking in a way Rachel had never heard before. 2 of the crossed-out names had been found, buried in a state park 40 miles from Austin, in graves so carefully hidden that they might never have been discovered if Caldwell hadn't drawn a map. Rachel Morrison should have been the 3rd. She hung up the phone and sat in her living room for a long time, watching the sunlight move across the floor, thinking about the moment she had glanced out her window and seen a man standing motionless in the moonlight. She had almost gone back to bed that night, almost convinced herself it was nothing, almost closed her eyes and trusted that morning would come and everything would be fine. But she hadn't. She had trusted her fear instead of dismissing it. She had watched and waited and called for help when every second counted. And because of that, she was sitting here now, breathing, alive, free, while the man who had planned to take everything from her sat in a cell, answering for crimes he would never commit again.